You know, it's that time of year where you can catch a lot of big pike up shallow. I mean, some of my favorite areas are the Missouri River reservoirs. You look at Lake Oahe, Lake Sakakawea, Fort Peck, Lake of the Woods, you know, these big lakes where there's big pike and you've got, you know, an open season. And just a couple of tips. A lot of times, you know, we're in really shallow water, you know, anywhere from say 2 feet underneath the ice to maybe out to 10 feet. And as you get late ice, you know, you can't go wrong just setting up in front of these streams that come in. You know, say if you're up on Lake of the Woods, these little tributaries that come in, setting up in front of those tributaries, or on the big Missouri River reservoirs, get back up in those major creek arms. And you know, it might be the insides of points, it might be secondary points, but you're trying to get back up in these bays as you get towards late ice, and it's a phenomenal opportunity to catch big fish. And a lot of times we're using just big dead baits. This is a sardine, frozen herring, smelt work. And you know, leave your comments below, you know, as far as what you like to do, because I'm always trying to learn stuff too, and I guess how I do things is changed and evolved over time. But I've really gotten to where I'm just using a single hook quite a bit, just a single treble, just going right through the back, just so that that bait hangs horizontal. And why not the second hook? I just find that, you know, with big fish especially, they have no problem swallowing that whole bait. And also too, when you have that second hook hanging around, sometimes they get caught on the bottom of the ice, or like if you're fishing Fort Peck, for example, there's a lot of flooded salt cedar and stuff for these fish to wrap up on. And so I've been just leaning more towards just using just a single hook, just going with a little bit larger treble hook, just a 40-pound fluorocarbon leader, and that's just a 50-pound Suffix tip-up line. I like to use heavier line. I find that it rolls off the spool better. And if your bait doesn't sink, it's because that air bladder's got air in it, and all you do is just take the top of your tip up and just poke it in the stomach, just like that. Poke your bait in the stomach and just squeeze the air out. That'll cause that bait to sink. But basically I want this bait to sink without putting weight or split shot or anything like that on it. Just find that just less can go wrong as far as fish dropping the bait. What I like to do is I just mark my depth. You can use a small bobber. A lot of times I just use a piece of rubber band to mark the depth, just because it's cheap and fast and easy. And something I like to do a lot, especially if there's a lot of wind or colder temperatures, like in the mornings especially, I love these finicky fooler hole covers. And so you just put this over the hole. And I've had these, I mean, in pretty cold conditions. And it just keeps your hole from freezing up. As far as what setting to use, if it's light wind, I go with the light setting. If it's strong winds, I'll face the tip up into the wind and use that bigger bar with a notch on it. A little bit heavier setting. And how these finicky foolers work is you just slide your bar, the tip up, just like that. And then it just sets down, and it really works great for keeping your hole from freezing up. And that's the basic system. I mean, you can catch pike a lot of different ways, but for my money, when you're using big baits and you want those fish to run a little ways and turn the bait, it's tough to beat a tip up. And so, you know, use a heavy line. It seems like it rolls off the spool faster, especially if you have flooded trees and stuff. You might need a little bit, use a heavier line. Sometimes we'll even do some tricks where, like on Fort Peck, for example, there's a lot of salt cedar and stuff in the water, where what I'll do is I'll pull off some line, and I'll just run a loop and tie a knot on this lever, or tie a knot on that little handle there, and then spool it back up. That way the fish can only take 2 or 3 feet of line, and it just stops them. And so obviously you have to use really heavy line for that, and you have to be close to the tip up for that to work, but it just keeps fish from getting tangled up if there's some flooded brush or flooded trees in the area. But this is the time. I mean, late ice here in March, even early April here, depending on where you're at. It's some of the funnest fishing you can experience. It doesn't take a lot of equipment. And so if you need tip-ups, if you need tip-up covers, if you need heavy line, some of the different basic tackle accessories for catching some of these big fish, make sure you check out Scheels. Go online, go into one of the stores, talk to one of the experts, but you can get set up with hardly any amount of gear. It doesn't take a lot of money, and this is just an awesome opportunity to catch some of the biggest fish.